well as Google myself. There's another Chris Luna in California, and he's a Elvis impersonator. So I'm looking forward to the day when I can go to one of Chris Luna's shows and give him shit. Say, I'm the real Chris Luna, motherfucker.
You're a Chris Luna impersonator?
Yes, that's right. I'll say, don't impersonate me, asshole, or at least not without a royalty check. All right. And what's really great about the other Chris Luna is that he's okay at the singing part. He doesn't really look like Elvis all that much, you know what I mean? But he's doing like the late era Elvis, which I love, with the, you know, rhinestones and the karate kicks and stuff. So that's beautiful. Yeah. I like early and late, pretty much. So I'm gonna let you know. I don't know when it's happening, but our next reader on the open mic for the second half has a forthcoming book. When does that book come out? Oh, he has no idea, because this is what happens when we work with small presses, right? They promise that they're making the thing, but he doesn't know when. But at some point in the future, we will have a book of poetry from Ian Caton. Please say hello to Ian. Woo!
So this is a piece I'm kind of putting together. It's a work in progress, so it might not be as smooth as I want it to be, but it can be part of a bigger piece called You Can't Make an Omelet Without Breaking a Few Eggs. And this one's called Trouble with Bros. There are too many bros in Southwest. I'll start over.
You can do it.
Trouble with Bros. There are too many bros in Southeast Portland last night. They're clogging the streets. They're standing in lines at restaurants with adorable names like Porque No. It's to be expected when pot becomes legalized, bros come out en masse. Sidewalk cafes are clustered with bros who sip beers and text each other. Bros are using rideshare apps to go from one crowded neighborhood to another. Bros cut their hair high and tight, then shave a part on the side of their heads. Fake hipsters with beards and skinny jeans are getting $20 haircuts. Bros are greeting each other on the street, giving dap and pound hugging. Bro culture has gone couture. Flannel shirts are sold at high-end boutiques. Bros are looking for chicks who like to screw, wandering around the strip clubs. The urban landscapes are littered with bros with names like Josh or Justin. They won't put up with any bullshit, standing around in fancy running shoes. Bros wear tight-fit jeans and use terms like dab and dakine as 420 culture becomes more mainstream. Bros visit Portland from such faraway places like Boise and San Jose. Bros in the streets are just looking for opportunities. Who can blame them? You don't see very many bros at poetry readings unless there's a game on TV. And then this is called Urgency and Accountability. The contents of this writing is to explain how I did indeed bomb at Toni's Tavern last Monday night, or not merely to bomb, but to explain that I did not soar to the desired achieved heights that I had planned by scraping the very bottom of the cesspool that is the poetry reading at Toni's Tavern on the first Monday of every month. And so due to the fact that technology had failed me at the time of my scheduled appearance, I not only did not soar to such great heights, but did in fact crash in a miserable spectacle, barely even coming off the runway, nosediving into a fiery hell of apocalyptic failure that was in actuality a response to my previous rumored tanking at Salon Skid Row 1 whole month prior. My intention was to read a scathing critique composed in verse of the broism plaguing the neighborhoods of Southwest Portland and downtown, including the Pearl District and elsewhere, and on the northeast as well, in places like Alberta and Mississippi, and generally most anywhere people will stand in lines that stretch around an establishment and cause congestion as people stand around and chat and text one another, waiting for a taco or a scoop of ice cream or biscuits and gravy or brunch or any such thing, just to be seen, to be a part of that scene, as is too common here, and how locals and longtime residents are whining about things changing as they so often will. And my critique was to be composed in a series of 16 haikus strung together that I had just completed on a test basis, as it was still a work in progress. And since the piece was to include bits about the recent 420 culture that this town is still coming to terms with, and critical remarks about strip clubs and the seedy adult underworld that has been a Portland hallmark since the 19th century, there was to be some language that could easily be misunderstood as vulgar or even misogynistic. And since that was a common theme reverberating from my last reading at Salon Skid Row, where it was rumored that I had bombed, I wanted to include a preface to my actual piece explaining how my work had been accused of being misogynistic and offensive, that it sucked every inch of air out of the room, that it was self-indulgent and no wonder that it bombed, and so forth and such, that I was going to concoct this political theory that there were nefarious forces in Portland trying to silence my work. And so because of that, I wasn't going to read at Toni's at all, but instead try something new and daring, be a bit experimental, and have Siri read the note that I had just put together on my iPhone, including the piece with the preface and introduction which would imply an indictment of Salon Skid Row, of being frauds, and having no fortitude for the artistically adventurous and for human vulgarities. And in fact, charging that they censor their poets, making the Rialto a weak place to read poetry. But technology, being what it is, failed me. I had no Wi-Fi. Siri would not read my note. I was then faced with the choice of either sitting down, quitting, picking a new piece to read, which in retrospect is what I should have done, or forging on with nervous hands shaking and cotton mouth, dry tongue, while forgotten water sits behind me, and reading the typed version that I had brought with me, sans implied indictment / preface, and just do my very best. And so of course I went on. This is not to say that I bombed per se, but now that my tricks and devices were not working for me, I was up there high on a wire without any net, and with probably 8 of the 10 greatest Portland poets of this generation were in attendance, watching me, morbidly curious as to what I was attempting to do. Too many props, what no poet should ever do. It's just gross, stumbling with my iPhone in one hand and Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing on the campaign trail of 1972 in the other. There was Dennis McBride and Mike G, Frank Sauce and Tommy Gaffney, Amy Zimmerman, Jennifer Robin, and me stumbling on my well-rehearsed words that I was certain of only minutes earlier, certain that improv would produce the very best results in this case, explaining that everybody knew I was one of the top 5 unknown Portland poets, top 2 or 3 in Vancouver, no doubt, spreading it on real thick but gross and tacky as only human failures would allow, and that there was a conspiracy to silence my words, alluding to the comments made after my ill-fated reading at Salon Skid Row, and then bumbling with my wireless internet connection as Siri remained silent despite my repeated requests to have her read my latest note. She would stay silent that night, and my hands shook as I read my piece, and my voice cracked as I mispronounced common terms like high and tight and fancy running shoes. This was not to be my night. And when I finished the piece, the 16 haikus, nobody said anything, and I waited, and it was awkward. Then a few clapped, hoping maybe I'd sit down. But I pressed on. I had 2 more poems to read. My tempo rushed, never able to fully recover. I read the next 2 poems too fast, one about my dad and the other about my brother. I was nothing if not persistent. I would continue. And then it was done, and even Toni's tavern was silent. Seems I had once again sucked out the air. Technology had failed me, and I had never recovered. A complete and total disaster. But then again, that was the point now, wasn't it? Even if I had won, it would still count as a loss, wouldn't it? My words read by AI, whether they came through or not, would be nothing more than a cheap parlor trick and would never have had that same urgency and accountability and human feeling of my piece being read by me, which is exactly what Hunter S. Thompson was writing about when the election of 1972, when the most evil, hated man in the world who could not be beat by anybody save himself and would in fact win in a landslide, beating George McGovern by 49 states to just one. Tricky Dick Nixon. Okay, so let's get down to business. Let's talk turkey. We are looking at a split in the electorate and have as fully 20% of the Republican constituents are rabid Trump supporters. That's a full 10% of the American citizenry as complete lunatics who will vote for Mussolini over MLK, JFK, FDR, Jesus Christ, and Gandhi on the same ticket. Mind you, they will vote. Compare that to Bernie Sanders supporters on the left, fully 60% of the Democratic base, which unfortunately comes out to only about 30% of this country, and maybe just 3% who will actually vote in the general, which actually leaves quite a bit of room for Hillary to fail to capture. Unfortunately, 4/5 of the world actually trusts her, leaving just 20% who will actually vote for her. Compare that to 10% of the rabid Trump supporters and 3% of the Bernie supporters who are actually registered to vote, and you've got another 1972 landslide victory for the GOP. And now that all the primaries are over except for DC, looks like Hillary's team has claimed victory, which in reality just a testament to her organization, the bewildered but patient feminist voting bloc from 2008. And that's what Ian thinks.
And Ian just provided the perfect segue for some self-promotion. Josh Lubin, the host of Salon Skid Row, has asked me to be a feature there next Tuesday. I hear from my friend Tiffany that it's a pretty fun reading, so if you want to see some of the drama that Ian was talking about, I will be 1/3 of the people providing the drama. I know, sorry Ian. Next we're going to hear from Bruce Hall. Come on up, Bruce.
I've got a couple here that I wrote in Chris's class, which it's not too late to register for summer term that starts the week after the 4th of July, right? The 11th, I believe, yeah. Okay. If I could go anywhere in the world, I would go to Cape Cod and look for fish. Do they have red snapper, flounder, or just cod? I would travel to Texas and find the birthplace of Pecos Bill and see if he looked like an hombre or a nerd. I would travel to San Francisco and Monte Cristo to see which one smells better. I would travel to Kathmandu to see if the jazz players are really wild and free or just another travel poster. I would travel to places that promise color. A river red, a river yellow, a river green, and that blue river that sounds like it's a curse word in its name. I would travel to Argentina to see if the grass is formal, stuck up, too dignified, or just called pompous. I would travel to the pool of liver, the knees that are wounded, the wood of the dead, and the hall of Tajma. I would travel to Florida and pick up the keys, and then go world round to see what they would unlock. And at night, I would travel to my own bed and dream of you. And this one is monsters. The monsters are under the bed, always hide from Dad. Or maybe Dad isn't afraid of them. Is that why he tells me there is nothing there? When Dad leaves, the monsters are crystal clear. Knife claws at the end of fingers, teeth that are longer than I am tall, breast that smells worse than the blue toilets at the baseball game, laser eyes. If I don't scream, they'll burn down the house. Dad, can't you see that monster? Dad, he's right behind you. I know the monsters won't hurt me when Dad is here. Who will protect me from the monsters when my dad is gone? Thank you.
Bruce asked me a favor. He asked if I would read this poem for him, and I'm happy to do that for him. This is called An Ode to William Buck Johnson, also known as Granddad Johnson. No one told him he had to love us, but he did it anyway. This short, fat man who married our grandma, the year her first grandchild was born. When he was out and about, he wore a hat. It wasn't in style, but it was his style. A camera around his neck. He drove a Buick and hated Fords, or at least he teased us that he did. Had a big glass knob on the steering wheel, called it a suicide knob, claimed it was illegal. It reminded him of driving truck in the World War. Which one, you ask? Both. He worked hard for our grandma, even though he would complain. I'd rather work 5 days at the smelter for Guggenheim than 1 day for you in the yard. The hedge was always neatly trimmed. A swing on the clothesline, wheelbarrow rides around the yard, wrestling and tickles in his chair. His TV show was never as important as us. Now I have grandkids, some related by blood, others from extended families, ties of blood, not a drop. I think of you and pick up those well-worn gloves of love. You wore them so well, so proud. I hope someday my grandkids will think of me and say, no one told him he had to love us, but he did it anyway. Bruce Hall. The good thing about hanging out with poets is that we're a bunch of hams in love with the sound of our own voices. So if you need someone to pinch read for you in a community like this, it's not too hard to find someone that'll do that for you. Poems are songs and songs are poems, and so our musician friends are always welcome, and we are always happy to say hello to Bryce Schramm. Come on up, Bryce. Let me know if you want me to move that microphone.
Just bend it. Yeah. I'm going to have a feature next Wednesday at Paper Tiger, and I'm just going to be playing some music or some poetry, you know. So this song is called Now I Know, and I pretty much have it down, but kind of not. That's just kind of my thing. And so yeah, here it goes. I've tried so hard, and still the results don't change. Expecting her to come around again. Now she won't. She's got nothing left to lose.
So that open mic where Bryce will be a feature is at Paper Tiger Coffee there at the corner of Evergreen Boulevard and Grand here in Vancouver. And they have a poetry open mic. You can bring some of your work over there, share it, and hear some more songs from Bryce. Songs and poems, right? Yeah. So, you know, we're pretty lucky. When I started the series, there wasn't a whole lot going on in Vancouver poetry-wise, and now there are at least 3 poetry open mics that I know of, and a couple of other things, like there's the Wildfire Wednesday group, which I believe you can read any genre that you want, and I heard of a new open mic that's happening at La Ti Da. I haven't been able to get a lot of info from them about what's going on there, but stop by and ask them. There's something going on over there as well. And that's how you make a scene, right? People need to have choices, and yeah, so it's cool. Okay, next, speaking of readings, our next reader is one of the co-hosts of the Last Tuesday reading that happens every month at Barnes & Noble, and hopefully she knows who will be the feature there this month. Okay, please say hello to Randy Knight.
I was hoping I would last long enough before my eyes closed from the allergies. So, yes, I do know, and that's what I'm actually going to concentrate on. Blueprints by Tim Applegate. He will be there Tuesday, June 28th at Barnes & Noble, 7 p.m. Excellent work, and I'm going to share a couple of his poems with you. Okay. The coffee fields. On the map on the wall of the restaurant he owns, I show Antonio the places in Guatemala my wife and I plan to visit. Antigua, Lake Atitlan, and Tikal. When he talks about his country, Antonio's voice is the rain that falls on the coffee fields his family worked in when he was a boy. When we walked to the fields in the morning, we sang. We didn't have a dime, but we sang. A week later, a rickety bus rattles up the green shoulder of a mountain. At the top, Sue points out the window and says, "There's Antonio," indicating a boy crossing a coffee field, carrying a burlap bag, possibly singing. And one more. After the movie. After the movie, the couple stopped at a shop for ice cream, then at a tavern across the street for a pint of beer. Later, as they strolled home, the man was unusually quiet. The film had disturbed him, but the woman was content, perhaps even happy. The night was clear, and the lights in all the tidy houses made her feel, at least for now, safe. Because you could get lost in a college town too, in the ivy, you could drink too much too often, you could sleep with strangers, you could gouge the walls of your marriage with the chisel of your wit. And in between those times, you could go to the movies. The screen darkens. There's that moment when the world seems perfect. She grabs hold of her husband's hand. Come and see him.
Thanks, Randy. Last Tuesday, I think you said 29th? Is that correct? 28th. Tim Applegate and you, if you decide to bring one of your poems by to read.
I will.
Yeah, it's fun. I've done it a bunch of times, and it's really fun over there. Again, speaking of readings, our next reader is one of 2 hosts of that Wildfire Wednesday reading that I spoke about, so I'm sure that she can tell you more about it than I can. Please say hello to Diane Kammer.
Hi, thanks. So Wildfire Wednesday, it's the last Wednesday of the month, so that'll be June 29th, 6:30 to 8 at the Cascade Park Library by the Furstenberg Center. And it's open mic for anything you want to read, as in prose, it can be poetry, it can be memoir, blog, nonfiction. So if anybody is not able to read, you can just read anything there. So, and it's about a 5-minute read. And then sometimes we'll do like a little workshop too. So it's a lot of fun. Okay, and we are taking a break for the summer. And then one other thing, and Chris could talk about it a little bit, is the August Poetry Postcard Fest. And if you Google that.
Why don't you talk about it, because I got a lot of announcements.
Oh, okay, all right. So August Poetry Postcard Fest, great for short poems if you write them or if you want to write them. And so beginning of each day in the month of August, you write out a poem, you put it on a postcard, you mail it out to somebody on a list that you get. Somebody on that list will have your name, and they'll send you a postcard with the poem they wrote. And I've averaged about 25 poems that I get. I send out 31, and it costs $10, and it goes to nonprofit, so that's cool. And so if you're interested at all, start collecting your postcards now. Good place to find them, garage sales. Okay, oh, sorry, yeah, did that. So that's it. Okay, and I have one poem.
From the microphone, just,
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so I've got one poem. Focus and pull back. Close-up shot of a daisy, petals carefully plucked. Optimistic voiceover says, he loves me not, he loves me not. Edit, leaves, brown by the stem. Edit, camera shadow layered on one side. Edit and edit, the negative words spoken. Play video backwards, watch the building of a flower. Green leaves attached to stem, one by one. White petals affixed to center, one by one. Redub the audio, refocus on these words. He loves me, and he loves me, and loves me.
Thanks, Diane. Yeah, and I have done the poetry postcards. If you've never done anything where you have to write a poem a day, one of the really good things about those kinds of projects is that it proves to you that you can. I know that before you do something like that, it feels really scary and you think, so if you ever want to know what it would feel like to be a poet every day, meaning you're writing every day, you may not like all 31 of them, but it's a really good practice. And like, for example, when I did it at the end of the month, I felt like I had 3 that I really liked. But one of the ideas with the postcard poetry thing is to be spontaneous. So you're not supposed to send them work that you've already finished, or you're not supposed to really edit. You're supposed to write a new poem on a postcard every day. And it's you'll really learn a lot about yourself as a writer, and it also sort of automatically ramps up your process to have to write one every day for that month. And it's fun. And you get stuff in the mail. I like getting stuff in the mail. I don't know about you. All right, let's please say hello to our next poet, Gordon Hayes.
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge everyone's bravery for getting up here, because this is my first time doing it, and it's frightening. Woo! So the poem I'm going to share with you tonight is called Rainbow Cup. Nothing can grow from falsehood. It must begin with a seed of truth. Story shapers and deceivers know this alike. The beginning, it starts with me. People say I have an attitude, among other things. I say I speak my mind. I say I claim my voice. I alone have walked through the fires of my life. I alone exist with the charred remains of my personal triumphs and the wasteland of my failures, flaws, and missed opportunities. I draw from the deep well of a varied past, covert and cruel, beautiful and heartbreaking, the enduring spectrum of the modern queer. I drink from a rainbow cup, thick with the spoiled slick of hate and rejection, dredged with tears and brutality. I drink from a rainbow cup, spilling over with jubilant celebration, the flood of creative liberation. I drink from a rainbow cup. longing for a mulled sweetness warmed by desire, a never-sated want of unending thirst. I drink from a rainbow cup, poured from a history of silence and enduring strength, poured from shadows of the past into an illuminated future. Thank you.
I hope that was a good experience for you, Gordon, and I hope that we see you here again. Please come back. All right, so we pause now for a few announcements. Can't get away from a Christopher Luna reading without some announcements. When I was really new to the whole poetry thing, one of the things that I noticed was people kind of keep things close to the vest. It's hard sometimes to find out the things that you need to know. And so I'm trying to pay it forward by helping people find events, find workshops, find out the things that are going on. I'm doing this for things happening on both sides of the river. So one of the things I want you to know if you're here for the first time tonight is we've got this clipboard here. And if you give me your email address, once a month I send out a list of readings and workshops and submission calls, again from Portland, Vancouver, and thereabouts. There are also 2 Facebook groups that you could join. You don't need to be a friend of mine or a friend of the leader of the other one either to be on it, just ask to be on it. The one that I started is called PNW Poets. Anyone in Washington or Oregon can post their own stuff or get on there and see what's going on in town. And the other one's called Portland Poets Exchange if you want to know what's happening with Portland poetry events. So I have that. I only send out 1 a month. The only month where I make myself a liar is April because it's National Poetry Month, but the rest of the year you'll get 1 long email from me, but it has a table of contents so you could skip around to the stuff you want. So what else do we have to talk about? If you want to do some writing, I do a monthly workshop here next door at Niche Wine Bar. It's before the bar is open, so she will serve us. You can purchase some coffee or some tea, and people bring shareable snacks. We go from about 11:30 to 2:30, and I've, of course, also been a participant in workshops, and I know that sometimes when you do a workshop, you come away feeling like you didn't really get much accomplished. So we kind of do high-speed workshopping where in the couple of hours that you're there with me, I try to make sure you go away with like a minimum of 4 drafts. So we do at least 4 exercises in that time, and there is also a little bit of time to share, work with each other. If you're considering coming, also bring one to share to say hello. We always have everyone just read one quick, no critique or anything, just to get one in the air. So that'll be this Saturday from 11:30 to 2:30 if you want to join us. It's a $20 suggested donation, which means if you can't swing it or don't want to swing it, please join us anyway. We want to, have everybody involved who wants to be involved. And then as I mentioned earlier, if you stick around after the workshop, Karen Folgarelli, who made these beautiful paintings that are in the show this month, will give an informal talk at 4 o'clock in this room. And what else did I need to mention to you? While I'm on Angst stuff, you might have noticed that the back of the room looks different than it has. Erin Dendrink, who's a local artist, has started her art supply. It was down the road a bit, but it's been relocated now to Angst, and right now she's open Thursday through Saturday, 12 to 5, and she's going to have an open house on June 25th. There'll be some demonstrations and activities and things like that, and you can kind of meet Erin and get a sense of what that is. So if you're someone that believes in keeping your money in the neighborhood, this is a really good way to do it if you're a creative person here in Vancouver. And then it looks like, I just have one more. One of the things that I did as the Poet Laureate of Clark County was we managed to get poems on the bus. I think we've got a few people here that are on the bus. Would you just stand for a moment so we know if you've got your poem on the bus right now in Clark County? Okay, so there were 10, let's give them a hand. These are 3 of our poets here. So, the first round, which was January through the end of this month, was a contest that we had where we found 10 local Clark County poets to have poems on the buses, and there are 166 buses in the Clark County C-Trans system. And what we've been doing since then is myself and a few other people from the community, including Jim Martin, have been going into the schools. Another thing that I started when I got that title was a Poets in the Schools program. I was a little bit jealous, I still am, of the Writers in the Schools program that Portland has, and I wanted to see if we could get something like that going here, and we've been able to. We've been able to raise grant money, and it's a small group right now. There's about 4 of us working on it. So the second round of Poetry Moves, they call them channel cards, that'll be on the buses, will go up July 3rd and we'll be there until the end of the year. And we're really happy that what we were able to do was find 10 students from the Poets in the Schools program to have their poems selected to be on the buses. So if you'd like to come and celebrate them, and C-Tran is going to bring one of the buses down, we're going to be in Esther Shore Park from 10 to noon on Sunday, July 3rd. So we've got a flyer up here that has all that info. It has the names of the poets, and we're going to get as many of the poets as are willing or able to be there. The young folks, we've got people from Fort Vancouver, Riverview, VSAA, from a bunch of different schools that we were able to visit. You know, come out and support the young poets, and then for the rest of the year, we'll have student poetry on the buses, which I think is pretty cool. I hope you agree. And then last but not least, the Washington State Poet Laureate is collecting poems from Washington poets for an anthology that he's making, and he said that the poems that don't make it into the book that he's putting together, he will try to put online. And you have a lot of time for that. I think it's a 2017 deadline, but I have flyers up here for that if you'd like to submit poems to the project that Todd Marshall is working on for Washington State. And we had him here last month, and he's fantastic. So I also recommend that you get online and look at the blogging and stuff that he's doing. He's definitely well suited for the job and doing a damn good job as our state laureate. Okay, so thank you for indulging that. It always happens, like I said. And now we return to another one who has been coming and loyal. And in fact, not only has she been coming since the first time we did it in November 2004, she brought her whole damn family to that reading. And most of them have been up here at some point reading a poem. Please say hi to Lori Loringer.
I might go just put it down. I am pretty sure.
It may fall off.
Yeah, well, that's true, but it still might. There. Howdy. You're getting my good side there, right?
You only have good sides, Lori.
Yeah, we like all your sides.
All right, this is called Late Winter Chickadees. Black-capped chickadee darts from tree to feeder in a dancing flash like a ninja boss. Under glinting sun, it's an easy run. Now the drops cling densely to one another in solidarity against the clouds from which they sprang. Solid to fend the gray wind, quiet sheets of water waving in the bluster, and the chickadee struggles to carry one seed from dish to branch. No lingering in the glass dish full of seeds and nuts. The cover keeps out rain, but nothing keeps the wind out. No waiting turns on wolfberry vines or bare twigs of rose. Just get what you can carry and hurry to safety. Then do it again, ensuring survival until the teasing promise of sun becomes something real you can count on. All right, this is called Just Dance. I want to paint the waving treetops in their constant response to the unseen breeze, but a painting would stop the dance, fail to capture that moment of doing what must be done. The trees understand, even invisible forces demand to be recognized. Sometimes you have to give a little to avoid being broken. And no matter how vulnerable you feel, dancing is always the answer. This is one of those where I just started looking through notebooks and found an old one here. This is called Meditation. Vivid images flash behind closed eyes, scenes of nature so bright I can smell the cool air by the lake, hear the birds and the vibrant trees, more real than being there. leaving me with perfect certainty that I carry this world inside, that nature itself depends on my memories. My mental imagery creates this manifestation. I am not the body, I am not the mind, but I am. In the beginning, there was only the Spirit of God.
Yeah, in a room full of poets, don't drop your pen. You may not get it back. Today I had that experience. I usually have about 6 in my pocket, and the reason is I have had that experience where I had an idea for a poem and every pen that I went for had nothing. And that happened to me today, 2 in a row that with nothing, and it was just pissed me off. So yes, I'm a pen stealer for sure. Don't leave your pens near me. Okay, Frank Hall. Come on, say hi to Frank Hall.
Thank you. It's my first time reading here, and I'm really impressed by the poets, and it's really great to see this. You have a good thing going here. I'm motivated by trying to feel intensely where I am in the course of the Earth's position right now. I feel like we're on a pedestal ready to fall over if we don't get our act together. So that motivates me a lot. Out of quiet shadow. The stag startled me out of quiet shadow. His defiant grace and wary calm, a sunlit wellspring of surprise. Shimmering leaves whispered sharp truths above us as the wild divine blazed so brightly in its ever-never eyes, that the forest became a green cathedral, and my heart a bursting spring. My burning fossil gun I could not hold, but dropped to wounded knees, and through my tears, released, I begged it here, my everything, my all, my whole confession. I've been doing poems, and I'm starting now to do a short story that is kind of poetic, so I hope it fits to do the first page and a half of it for you. It's my thinking through what it will feel like to experience social collapse in the Pacific Northwest if we avoid addressing climate change. Allegretto. The day felt pastel to Rubio. Before starting his walk out above the small harbor town, he had dressed in his simplest whites so he could think, because his heart did not know whether to pound or to stop altogether. At the edge of town, the sidewalk faded away, abandoning him to open countryside and a lonely road up the hill beside the sea. He paused to breathe the lingering smell of the docks and let the distant wave song wash over him. He wondered how it had sounded before the big heat came. Everything on all sides felt taut and stretched thin in color. But inside, Rubio realized with alarm, he still had no color for how he felt. This is wrong, he thought, unnerving and very wrong. Rubio had always felt in colors. As a child, he wondered why no one else did so, but he never had known how, or even why, one might separate a feeling from its obvious color. And when as a man he made paintings that hung too long on the walls of struggling art galleries, he painted landscapes more by the way they felt to him than by the way they looked to others. But now the tragedy of the previous day had tumbled colors with feelings more than ever for him, with a shock that had stifled and muted everything into one voiceless, transparent scream. Steeling himself, Rubio began striding up the empty road in tick-tock steps, turning his collar against the winds off the Pacific, which gusted stronger as he climbed higher. He couldn't bear to look back down on that sad betrayal of a town with its chaos of people and things, and its harbor full of wave-murmuring boats, all dreaming of elsewhere, and bobbing slowly at the docks in disjoint rhythms, like one great fibrillating heart that could not awaken. Squinting into the brilliant daylight, Rubio gulped the crisp ocean wind as if he could break open his chest. He fought to clear his mind in the fierce simplicity of the landscape. The feather blue sky swooping down all around felt as if it had talons poised. The stone gray of the road felt defiant as it wound boldly up the hill, keeping a wary distance from the cliffs of mumbled rock and clay that gazed in mottled greens and browns of terrified futility out over a sullen silver sea. Across the hillside, the sleepy golds of reedgrass were disturbed by anxious green smudges of salal brush and slashed with darker